Good morning and welcome to Sew Ab Fab. Today I'm going to show you how to make the Tessuti apron that is part of the December complete dressmaking kit. So this is what we're going to be making today. We're going to be making it in a indigo denim, which I have here. So as you can see, I've already cut my pattern pieces out. I used the PDF version, so that's why it looks so messy, and it's been well used, to tell you the truth. So all my pieces are cut out. I haven't removed the pattern from the fabric. I like to do this as I go along so that I don't get any pieces muddled. I keep everything in order, and also, more importantly, the first thing we've got to do is put in some tailor tacks, or however you like to make your markings on your fabric as to where the pocket's going to sit. So we're going to do a quick tailor's tack. There is a little video of how to do a tailor's tack on the blog. You need a different colour thread to your fabric so that it stands out, because of course you don't want to put these marks in and never find them again. So it needs to be a long length of thread. Okay, a needle, hand sewing needle, any size. Let's see if I can get any out. There we are. Quickly thread it. Put under pressure now. Oh, I shouldn't mash, then it would go in a little bit easier. Nope. You just snip it and give it a sharp end. There we are. So double your thread. Now on the pattern, the points that you need to mark is marked clearly. Basically just 2 points where the corner of the pocket, because the fabric is folded in half, it will mark the 4 positions, or the 4 corner points of your fabric, of your pocket. So just quickly mark them. You can of course mark them with chalk, or a fabric pen that washes out. This is just my preferred method. A bit old school, but I like the process really. So I'll snip my loop. So that's one in. Let's see if I can do another one in double quick time. This is a very simple pattern to make up. It's a beginner's pattern. There's no fitting required, and one size fits all. And obviously, once you make one of these up, you still got your pattern pieces, so you can make as many as you wish. Great gifts. There we are. Quickly pop in the other. Nothing like sewing under a bit of pressure. There. Make sure I've got long enough tails. And that's done. I'm just going to pop the needle away because I have dogs, and if I don't pop it away and lose it, the chances are one of them will find it. It'll cost me a lot of money in the vets, and I'll have a very poorly dog to boot. There we are. So that's all done. So all my pattern pieces are marked. I have snipped where it's indicated to snip, so they have popped some little markings where you need to snip. You can either do your triangles out, or you can snip in. Bear in mind the seam allowance, so don't snip too deeply. But everything is now ready to go. So I will run through the next steps. I'm going to remove this pattern piece because I just want to separate that tailor tack, and we're going to be working on this next. Make sure I've got all the pins. I'll just put them to one side. I'm gently going to lift this off because I don't want to pull my tailor tacks out. I want to keep them in situ. I put my hands behind to anchor them. Just do each one at a time. Fold it out of the way. And now I am just gently going to separate my fabric and snip the tailor tack so they are on both sides of the fabric. And might be clearer from the back. Yeah, you will be able to see that there are 4 little lots of pink threads, and that denotes where the pocket is going to go. So on to the next section. I have now removed my pocket pattern piece away from the actual fabric, and what we're going to do is we're going to stay stitch 1/4 of an inch inside the seam allowance, and we're going to do it on the bit the way you've marked the 2 notches. So I don't know if you can see my little notches. So all I'm going to do is I am going to just stitch along that edge. So stay stitch is basically, it's going to stop your fabric from distorting. By putting a row of stitches in, it just stops that extra little bit of stretch and movement that your fabric's got, and it will make the pocket easier to work with. So I'm just going to run I'm just going to run a row down. Just a few things first. I have changed my needle to a jeans needle because I'm working in denim. It's always best to use the most appropriate needle for your fabric. So in this case we're working with denim, so we want a good strong needle, and a jeans needle is made out of steel. I am using an assorted pack, because this is what I've given out in the kits. So you have a range of sizes 90 to 100. My denim's quite lightweight, so I'm using a size 90 needle. Okay, so that's already in the machine. I've got matching thread. My bobbin is full because I don't like playing chicken with my bobbin. So that's all done. I'm just going to move my needle across, so I've got 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Now with stay stitching, there's no need to reverse back and forth at the beginning. It's your choice really. So I like to do it, but there isn't a necessity for it. So I'm just going to do a couple of stitches in, a couple of stitches back, and just whiz down that pocket edge. And then cut it off. So that is stitched, and we're on to the next bit, which involves the iron. What it tells us to do now is to turn that seam allowance, that 1/4 of an inch, into the wrong side and give it a good press. So I have got my iron on nice and hot, watch your fingers, and I'm just pressing in along that stitched edge, just where we've stitched. I'm just, as you can see, we've just done 1/4 inch. I'm going to use a bit of steam just so it holds it in place, like so. So now we have got a turned in edge. That's like a hem now, and it's just on that where that stitch line was. I've just turned it in and pressed it down. It tells you to do this throughout the pattern as you go along, so that's what it means by just turning in that first 1/4 of an inch where you've run your row of stay stitching along. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're just going to zigzag the edges of our pocket pieces to stop them fraying. If you've got an overlocker, by all means use your overlocker, but on a regular sewing machine we just use a zigzag stitch, and we put our material in the middle of the machine foot so that one of the zigzag goes on the fabric and one goes off the fabric, and that way it wraps it and it stops it from fraying in the wash. So I'm just going to quickly do that. My machine's set to a zigzag, and I am literally just going to go along with my fabric in the middle. I'm just going to turn it around when I get to the corners. Now with a zigzag you don't need to reverse at the beginning and at the end. It's just there to, it's a functional stitch just to stop it fraying. And this lightweight denim does fray, and you don't want any stray threads in your pocket. They get on my nerves. So I'm just going to take the time to do this. I know it's an extra step, but it's worth it. It's just those finishing touches that takes your handmade garment to more of a professional garment. So that's that. I'm just gonna snip the threads. I'm very lucky I have a machine that snips the threads for me. I haven't always had this. This is a new machine and a real treat. So anyway, so I am now going to move on to the next step. I have the instructions with me because I thought it would be best to follow it word for word so that everybody's doing the same thing. So what it says to do now is to fold my pocket piece over by 1 inch like so. So you're folding it right side to right side like that, and we are just going to pop a pin in to secure it. Pop a pin in like so, and on the other side like so. Now I always pop my pins in this way and not this way or the other way up, because I find it much easier when I come to sew to be able to remove the pin before I get to the needle this way without having to struggle pulling it down or out. And if you forgot to take your pin out, your machine's more likely to roll over the pin going this way. But if you can, please take your pins out. Just worried about pins breaking your machines or snapping off. So I'm going to go back to a straight stitch now. My seam allowance for this is 1/2 inch, so I'm going to pop it in the correct place. Now on a straight stitch you do want to reverse at the beginning and at the end. That way your stitches are nice and secure and it's not going to come undone. So what we want to be doing is we are just stitching down the edge of that turned edge. So we're literally a couple of stitches forward, then reverse, come to the end, and then reverse. That's that. And cut it, and then you want to do the same on the other side. So as you see, I remove my pins as I come to them. Pop my needle down. So I put my presser foot down and then I pop my needle down. You can put your needle down first and put your presser foot down. It's up to you. It's your preference. And then I want to go back and forth. I'm just going to pop my pin down and then reverse back and forth and then snip it. There we are. So that is now secure. If you wanted to, you could give it a press, but I'm going to wait until the end. So I'm going to do the next step. Now it says to turn the lower edge of the fabric of that bottom pocket in by 1/2 inch. So basically where you've had your stitch line. So again, pop your pin in. And same on the other side. There is no, this isn't the holy grail of how to do a pocket. I am literally just following what they're telling us so that we're all going to be doing the same, and I haven't taught you in a different way. So we are going to sew across the bottom edge of this by 1/2 inch. So I've got my pin in the wrong way. Not helpful. There we are. So literally pop my needle down. I'm going to take my pin out and go forward and back, forward and back. And there we are. And the same. Pop my needle down, forward and back. So my threads there didn't come quite that short. I'm just going to snip them. Right. So we have the same as what they've got, and it's telling me to turn out the top edge of the corners of the pocket and gently press the pocket hem and seam allowances towards the wrong side. So make sure you get those pockets nicely turned out. Not quite. It's a bit fiddly, but take your time. There's no rush. And what I'm going to do is now give it a nice quick press, so that that's all in place, and then I'll show you what it looks like. So now I have my pocket piece like so, and I'm going to attach it to the front of my apron. So I'm going to get my apron. So where we have marked with our tailor tacks those 4 points, so you've got one here, there's another one up here, and down there and there. That is where we're going to pin our pocket to. Remember to put the top of your pocket at the top. I have made a mistake before and I've had to take it all apart. So just need to make sure your fabric is on the flat. I know you can't see this, but I am literally just pinning my pocket piece in place, ready to sew, making sure it's central. Now if it doesn't fit your markings exactly, just try and just get it as central as possible, so you've got a nice neat pocket that's not skew width. It's in the center like this one, as you can see. So just literally to start with, I'm just pinning the 4 corners. Like so. I'm just making sure. Now, and we are literally going to stitch round those edges. Obviously not the top edge, but we're going to, it's called top stitching, and I'm going to increase my stitch length for this. So at the moment I'm sewing with a 2.5 stitch length, and I'm just going to increase it to 3. Now there is a bit of bulk where your corners are of your fabric, so your machine might struggle. Take your time. You can always, if you've got a machine that's got a hand crank, you can always crank it. All machines have them. Whatever suits your machine best. Now you could be really fancy and do this with a different colour thread. Obviously whole of my apron I'm doing in the blue, but if I wanted my pocket to stand out and I wanted to do some decorative stitching or do a snazzy square at the top of each corner, you can change your thread, but I'm going to do it all in blue. I'm going to increase my stitch length, move my needle across a bit, and basically you are just going to stitch down. Now you do want to go forward and back on this, and then at the corners I do a couple of stitches on the spot just to secure it. So my needle needs to go down and we are off. There we are, back and forth. So I'm coming up to a bulky corner. I'm just going to move my pin. I am just going to tuck any bits that are showing out of the way. So I've reached the point where I don't want to go any further. So I'm very lucky on my machine. I've got a button that will just take the needle up and down. You can use your hand wheel to do that. And then I'm going to just swizzle round and then do the bottom bit exactly the same. I don't know about you, but I do love a pocket. seem to collect things as I go along throughout the day. So if I'm wearing one of these, I've always got somewhere to pop it in. I just want to do one more stitch and then go up and down again a few times. That's that. I'm going to turn again. And I'm going to come along the last edge. Now I know there's a fair bit of material to get underneath your machine, but it will do it. All machines will do it, especially if you've got a denim needle. It makes all the difference. And obviously those that are doing this with the kit, they do have denim needles with them. I'm just going to reverse back and forth. That's it. And that is your pocket attached. So you can take out your threads that you have used to mark where you wanted your corners to go, or obviously if you've used a bit of chalk, you might want to brush it off now. I collect all my threads as I go along. I have a little pot and I just pop everything in there, because otherwise I find it jams the hoover if I chuck it on the floor. I found that's the best way to work for me. So that is your pocket piece in place. I don't know if you can see. And we are on to the next stage. So we are now going to attach our straps. So you want to get, you want to lay your apron out like so, and you've got the widest bit, the bit that goes around the back, and you want to get your straps and you want the widest bit, not the thin bit, the widest bit. So at this point we can take the pattern piece off. I have again snipped where they've indicated to snip. I'm just going to put these away. Okay, and we're going to work right side to right side, and we are going to put the right side of the main pattern, or the main apron piece, to the widest side and the right side of the strap. I'm going to pop a couple of pins in place just to keep it secure, and then I'm going to do the same on the other side and move it across again for you to see. There we are. You have to bear with me, very new to filming. So just a couple of pins, you don't need lots. We're now just going to sew across with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, moving our pins as we come to them. You do want to reverse and go forward on this, so to secure your stitches. I've lost my pins. Hold on. Go back. That's that one done. That one. Find my other one. Forward and back at the beginning. That's that done. And then we are just going to zigzag like we did before, the edges together. So the raw edge of that seam you've just created, you're just going to zigzag just to stop it fraying. That's that one. Bring my needle up. Oh. And just do that one. done. And then now we are going to do the hem of all things. This is the order they've got it in, and it does work because I've followed it several times. So we are literally going to stay stitch the hem like we did before, just 1/4 of an inch in, so that we've got a nice hemline that won't stretch and go wavy. So we're just going to literally stay stitch 1/4 of an inch all the way round the bottom edge of your apron. Okay, so just changing the needle position, which I find it easier. You can change your foot to 1/4 of an inch foot if you've got one, or like me, you can cheat and move your needle across. So I am literally gonna, with all the way round, I am gonna reverse back and forward at the beginning and end. So my needle's down. Careful not to stretch your fabric in any way. This denim has actually got quite a lot of give, so it will stretch out if I'm not careful. So I'm just gently guiding it through. I'm not pulling it in any way, I'm not pushing it. I am just literally gently guiding my fabric through. I'm letting it run through my fingers. And I am just guiding it through. And now what we're going to do is we are going to press over that 1/4 of inch seam allowance along that stitching line, and give it a good press with a bit of steam so it stays in place, because then again we're going to turn it over again and then we're going to stitch. So it goes over the first time by 1/4 of an inch along that stitch line, and then over again by 1/4 of an inch, and then we're going to hem it properly. Okay, so I'll be back in a minute. Right, so I have turned it over like I said to you, and I have pinned that all in place, and I'm now going to stitch this hem, and then obviously remove the pins as I go along. So you can work from the wrong side or the right side. The choice is yours. I'm going to work from the wrong side so you can see what I'm doing, because it's a little bit clearer on the camera for you. I'm going to just move my needle across one more. So, right, so needle in. Now you do need to reverse back and forth. Okay. There we are. Take your time. That's it. Woof, lost one of my straps. Now this is a one size all fits apron. If you're struggling with the 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, which we're going to be using all the way around to press everything, you could use a centimetre and then turn it up by a centimetre. It's not going to cause huge issues with the fit of this garment. Your straps might be a little bit narrower, but if you use the same seam allowance all the way through, it won't have an effect. It'll only have an effect if you do it on one part and not the other. There we are. Sorry, I'm just checking what the other camera's doing. As I say, I'm totally new to this. Usually I like to sit and sew with either music or an audio book. At the moment I'm revisiting all of the Harry Potters. This time instead of reading them, I'm doing audio, because my niece and nephew are seriously into Harry Potter at the moment, and it's just lovely to have something in common to talk about. I loved them the first time round, and I am falling back in love with them again. The books, that is. Not my niece and nephew, I've always loved them. feels like forever, but I'm nearly there. Now you might be doing this and thinking your stitching's not very straight or you've missed a bit. Do you know what? No one can see your stitching if you're sewing in matching thread. So please don't point it out when someone says, oh my, what a lovely garment that is. And you go, oh, it's terrible. Look, I've missed this bit and I've missed that bit. Don't do it. They'll never notice. We're very good at putting ourselves down, and actually we should take credit for what we've spent hours making. And often you make a gift. So, you know, enjoy the compliments. That's it. That's that done. I'm just going to give it a quick press. The more you press your garments as you go along at each stage, the more professional your garment will look. Nothing will be wavy, everything will be crisp, neat. I'll have that professional finish. So if you can use steam, use a bit of steam, always works wonders. Now we're going to do the same with our outer edge. So this complete long length, you're going to stay stitched down the edge by 1/4 inch. Then we are going to fold it in and then fold it in again and stitch all the way down. So I am going to quickly stay stitch it. Make sure I've got the right edge. Don't want to do the wrong one at this stage. Don't forget that this seam is going down into your apron. Okay, so you want to make sure you're sewing it down. That's the seam where the straps meets the apron. You're sewing it down into the apron. So I am stay stitching. So we're coming up to the seam on this one and you can actually see what I'm doing. So I'm pushing it down towards the apron, the main body of the fabric, just sewing it in place like so. Going to press that over along that stitching line, so pressing it to the wrong side, and then once it's pressed, turning it again, pinning it, and then we're going to stitch all the way along it. So now you are just going to stitch like you did before, that turned hem in place. So we've turned it twice. It's pinned and it's secure, and we're now just going to stitch it in place. I have to say, it might have been an idea to pre-wash this fabric. I normally would, but I wanted to get this video done quickly because my fingers are going blue. Can you see? So when you do pre-wash it, wash it on its own, do it in a warm wash and put a colour run sheet in, and that will hopefully get rid of the excess dye. I do that on all cottons normally, not so much jersey, but definitely on anything that's cotton based and that has a lot of dye, and indigo does have a lot of dye. Anyway, lesson learned. I'm going to have a blue machine. So I'm going to pop my needle down, go back. So I'm taking out my pins as I come to them. Now, I might be whizzing through this and you might be thinking, oh my goodness, please don't. Sewing's supposed to be enjoyable. And if you have to do it in several sittings, do it in several sittings. If you only get half an hour in the evening to do a bit, do one of these seams in evening. Don't put yourself under any pressure. I want people to enjoy the experience. I'm obviously whizzing through this because it's video and it kind of needs to be done on the same day, but I often find that I enjoy projects when I have more time to do them. You know, I get more pleasure out of spending time on them. So, yeah. You can see, well not see, you can hear when the needle hits a lot of thick denim when you're going over your seams, and that is why it's so important to have the right needle in. Struggle on this last bit because it's quite thick, as you can hear. Just take my time. That's that. Perfect. And just snip those ends, because otherwise I'll forget and won't be able to come back to them. So that's both our outside edges done. We're nearly, well, I'd say we're halfway through. We've just got the inside edges to do, and that's a little bit more fiddly. So I'm just going to give this a quick press so they're nice and crinkle free and neat. So at the end, it's much quicker finishing process. Now we are going to do our stay stitching again, 1/4 inch on the inside of it, of the armholes and the bib. So we're going to go all the way down here and up and round to the top, and then we are going to do the same on this side, and then we're going to fold it in like we did before, turn over once, but that's all we're going to do because the next step is slightly different. So let's get on with that. So we're back to our stay stitching, just 1/4 inch. So a lot of repetition in this pattern, which is lovely as a beginner project, or if you're more experienced, it's a quick make, and that's why they're great for gifts as well. So, or if you just want a bit of time out, I don't know, family life can be super hectic. This gives you, you can do this in a couple of hours. This gives you a nice quiet time out if you're an experienced sewer. So let's get going. Remember to point your seam allowance down towards the apron. I'm keeping an eye on my bobbin. It's amazing how much thread you go through on this one project. And I'm just watching my bobbin just to make sure I've got enough to keep going. And I'm just going to do the same on the other side. So I've pushed the seam allowance down. I'm gently easing around the curve. That's it, I'm not stretching my fabric. Just gently moving it around. Go back and forth, that's it. Okay, so that is done. So as I say, we're going to turn it in once and press. And while you're at the iron, if you want to do the next step, so you've turned it in once and pressed, you turn in again, but you only turn in again for the strap. So up until that seam allowance. So from there on, it's only once. So where the big curve is, you're only doing once. But on the strap, you're turning in twice like you normally would. So I'm just going to take my pins. So we're just going to sew just down that strap edge, just the strap edge, just to meet that seam, okay, on both sides. So go back and forth. That side done. That's that strap done. Find the other one. Picked up a stray thread somewhere. I don't know where I picked that up from. There we are. That's it. So again, just up to that seam allowance. Just a couple more stitches. That's it. All done. Right, so we are now going to do the next step. So this is the top of our apron. So we're working with right sides, and we're going to take our strap and we're going to pop it in the opposite corner, and we're going to have it a quarter of an inch from our turned edge, like so. I don't know if you can see that, so I've got a bit sticking out, so it's turned. Just going to pop a couple of pins in. You want to make sure your strap's not twisted at this stage. So pop a pin in that one, and then I'm going to take my other one, and I am going to pop a pin in. Do the same, a quarter of an inch from the edge. Pop a pin in place, and then I am just going to stitch just across those 2 points. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly do that. just using the 1/4 of an inch seam allowance again, just across the where the strap is. Remember to go forward and back at the beginning and at the end. There is a thread. I've lost my scissors on the floor as well. Oh, it's all going wrong now. So keep going. That's that one in place, just to secure them until we do the next step. So it looks like this at the moment. Okay, so now we are going to get the last piece of our pattern that we haven't used, the facing upside down. That would help, wouldn't it? So this is what we're going to use next, and we are just going to take our pattern piece off, pop it to one side. And again, we are going to sew 1/4 of an inch down one of the long edges. Okay. I'm now going to stay stitch the top edge. Back and forward at the end. And then I'm just going to iron it over. So what we're going to do now is we're going to place our facing onto our main apron piece. So we are going to pop it along the top, so your bottom edge is at the bottom, your folded edge I should say is at the bottom. Now this will extend either side of your top of your apron. Because of that folded edge there, it should extend. So we are just going to pin it in place, make sure it's even. And then you're going to sew 1/4 of, sorry you can't see that, 1/4 of an inch all the way across the top. So the edges are aligned. Like so. Okay, so we're just going to stitch 1/4 of an inch along the top. Remember to go forward and back at the beginning and at the end to secure those stitches. Now what we're going to do is we are going to press our seam allowance up towards that facing, because in a minute we are going to understitch the seam allowance to that facing. So I'm just going to give it a quick press. I am going to now understitch, and I'm going to understitch as close to that seam line as possible, but on the facing side of the fabric, and I'm going to catch the seam allowance. This, when we turn the facing over like so, will stop it all rolling in. It secures it, gives you a nice neat finish. I'm going to pop the seam line in the center of the foot, and I'm going to move my needle over slightly to the right, and I am going to stitch back and forth, and as I go along I'm going to make sure the seam allowance is all facing this way. Pop my needle down, go back and forth, making sure that I keep my seam line in the center of my foot. We've got, I don't know if you can see that very fine row stitching right next to the seam allowance. Now that's going to hold all our facings in place. So what you're going to do next is you are going to turn your facing back so it's right sides to right sides, like so. And I'm just going to get a couple of pins, and you are now going to just sew a 1/2 inch down this edge here. Just these little edges here, just using your 1/2 inch seam allowance or whatever seam allowance you've been using. Ooh, got my finger then. So I don't want to sew over my strap, so I know where my 1/2 inch is. So I am literally going to pop my needle down. I'm going to go forward and back. Whoops. Make sure you're catching the turned up bit as well. And you want to do the same on the other side. Just move my strap out of the way. Just feeling, because obviously I can't see now, so I'm just feeling where that edge is. Just got a couple more stitches to go. And that's it. And now we are going to turn it the right way. Now, to take some of this bulk out, you can just snip some of your corners off. Careful not to strip through anything that you don't want to snip through. That's that. And you're just going to turn it out the right way. Give yourself a nice clean edge. So you are turning your apron out the right way, like so. So it's on the back now. And now we are going to hem that inner armhole that we left. So we're going to turn it over again. So it's already been turned once. We're going to turn it double, and we're going to go all the way around. And you're also going to sew along that bottom edge to secure that into place. So I am literally going to start, get my pins. And so we started at that sleeve. It's a bit fiddly now because everything is attached, but we're just literally going to pin it in place. All fingers and thumbs when you're having to do it. Show it to someone. That's it. It's actually easier not to work on the flat because we're working on a curve. So you should be able to do all this up one armhole, over the top and back down the next, all in one go. So just take your time and pin. We're nearly there. So nearly at the finishing point. And go back and snip any stray threads afterwards, especially if your fabric is frayed. My fingers really are blue now. Make a change. Normally they're covered in mud from an allotment. I have an allotment, and normally from digging and planting, they're normally covered in mud. So a bit of indigo dye is something a bit different. I don't catch my material. Come back and pin that top bit in a minute. I'm just going to do the other side. Now I here just have a whole heap of different pins. Some are plastic head and some are glass head, and obviously I cannot iron over my plastic heads. I have done a lot of times by mistake, and you end up with a mess on the bottom of your iron and a squished pin head. So please bear in mind what type of pins you're using. If you're wanting to press as you go along, you might need to pop a cloth in between you and, well, the iron and the pin. I start off with all good intentions to keep everything separate, like all my different types of pins, and inevitably they all end up in one pot or one pin cushion. It. Right, just going to pin that top bit. Oh, I've lost a pin from somewhere. So you have to excuse all the door slamming, and I'm sure you've heard people chatting. I'm doing this at home, and I can't stop everybody from doing their normal Sunday activities, when in fact today they've been putting the Christmas lights up. So I can't complain because I've been desperate for the lights to be put up. So we are now going to just stitch, as I said before, from one seam on the strap all the way round to the other strap seam. Right, finishing stages. So Right, move everything out of the way. So we want to start with one seam, which is going to be that one. So you have to go back and forth on this, start and at finish. Remember, you're starting on quite a bulky seam, so it might take a little while to get going. Just going to reverse back. Oh, I've lost my strap again. Do you know what? This is becoming a one shoulder number. That's it. I think it's the way I'm sat. I'm not totally straight. So that's it. I'm just going round the curve. I'm taking my time. Trying to keep it as flat as possible. So you just want to come up 1/4 of an inch on your facing. Now mind you don't sew over your straps, and we are just going to stitch down the facing. Getting stabbed by pins left, right and centre. Just take your time around the curves. Oh, final few stitches. That's it, reverse. Perfect. So I'm going to give it a quick press, but that is effectively it. If you bought the kit, you've got a couple of labels to choose from, and it's up to you where you pop it. If you didn't and you're just sewing this from home, then well done you have a fantastic apron. As I said, I've done it in denim. You can do it in anything you like. You can do it in linen, you could do it in an upholstery fabric, like curtain material, but remember that usually with aprons you want to pop them in the wash. So it would be advisable to make sure that the fabric you're using is machine washable. I have done it on a fabric that is 150 centimetres wide, and therefore it takes up less fabric. If you do it on a slightly smaller one, you need to bear in mind your pattern print if you're going to choose something with a pattern. But that is it. If you make one, I would love to hear from you. Just share your picture with me on Instagram. So that's hashtag Sew Ab Fab, or you can drop me an email at info@sewabfab.co.uk, and if there's anything that you'd like me to video or top tips that you'd like to learn, just get in touch. I want this to be informative for everybody. So thank you for watching, and enjoy your aprons. I'm just going to see if you can see. There we are. There is one apron all done. Not for me, I have 3. This is a gift for a friend for a birthday present, so let's hoping she likes it. But it's as simple as that. Enjoy.